car crashes, defective products, dangerous drugs, injuries, and abuse. Across the state of Alabama, the attorneys, proudly sponsored by the law firm of Hollis, Wright, are here to serve you. Your tough legal questions answered by our experts with the attorneys of Hollis, Wright.
Good evening and welcome to another episode of The Attorneys. We have a lot to get to tonight. We're talking about medical malpractice. That sounds big, but we're going to take you through that and unpack it for you, make sure that you get the good information that you need. And in case right now you want to get in contact with an attorney, Hollis Wright is making that available for you right now. All you have to do is call 1-844-LAW-TALK. You will reach an attorney, a live attorney, and it's free, it's confidential, and they can answer whatever question you have, because you can go ahead and get that started right now. But we're talking medical malpractice, guys, and that's a big topic. Yeah. But I know we're going to take people through what they need to know.
Absolutely, and there's some interesting statistics out there. Johns Hopkins University did a study a few years back, and roughly about 250,000 individuals die each year as a result of some form of medical error, and that number could be as high as 400 or 450,000. So this is an area that we practice in at our firm quite a bit. Justin Owen, our guest, his firm really kind of specializes and hones in on these medical malpractice cases, which is why I wanted to have him with us on the show here this evening to kind of navigate through this. But really just some sobering statistics out there. But one of the things that I want to mention is Alabama has a great medical community. We've got incredible hospitals. We've got incredible doctors that specialize in a lot of different areas. But just like anybody, doctors and hospitals and nurses, they make mistakes as well. But in situations where you're providing medical treatment to somebody, the consequences of a mistake can really be devastating. And oftentimes those individuals or their family members will contact a lawyer to see if they have a claim.
And even understanding what medical malpractice is.
Yeah, and that's going to be the first thing I want Justin to explain to the viewers, which is Justin, what exactly is medical malpractice? And thank you for joining us on the show tonight.
Well, thanks for having me on, Carter. Thank you, Art. I appreciate it. Medical malpractice, and some people call it medical negligence. It is a particular type area of the law. It's a type of negligence, like you have car accidents and things like that, or people slip and fall or get injured in construction accidents, but it has different elements to it and different types of standards. Generally, it is a medical professional, usually a person, who is providing services or some form of care or treatment to a person. And what happens is there's a standard of care that applies to what they do. Like there's a standard that applies to what attorneys do or what any professional does out there in the world, or a construction worker or a carpenter. And they're supposed to apply those standards of care and follow them when they come and treat patients or when patients come to them. And generally some mistake or some form of failure occurs, or a delay, and it's called a breach or a violation of the standard of care, usually based on some sort of act or omission. And when that happens and somebody gets injured or they die, there can be liability there if the standard of care was not met.
Yeah. Tell the viewers a little bit about your background, how long you've been practicing law, and how did you get started focusing in on this particular area involving medical malpractice?
So I've been practicing law for about 14 years. I started off as a defense attorney, actually, and practiced as a defense attorney for about 2.5 or 3 years, and then switched sides of the courtroom and started doing plaintiff's work. I worked with a really great plaintiff's firm for many, many years, and actually in the last year joined two partners and longtime friends and started our own firm called Bodewell LLP, or some people call us Bodewell Legal Group. I got into medical negligence work because when I switched sides of the courtroom to plaintiff's work, the group I went to do and work with, they really did some medical malpractice work and were known for doing it very well. I took on a lot of those cases. I've always liked medicine and been fascinated with it. I have lived with a lot of physicians, and I'm friends with a lot of them as well, and really, really enjoy it and feel like, you know, when those situations occur, they may not happen all the time or often as, say, a car wreck, but when they do, they're serious and people's lives are changed.
Yeah, unlike an automobile accident or a slip and fall or other types of civil litigation or personal injury matters that our firm handles and your firm handles, medical malpractice cases are unique because they can be very investigative intensive and can take quite a long time to investigate. Comment about that, and comment about it in the context of what the statute of limitations is in Alabama, because I think it's important for the viewers to know that if they think they've been a victim of medical negligence, don't delay. Call somebody as soon as possible.
That is the best question we may ask all day, and the best answer that I'll be able to give, and most useful one. In general, when it happens to adults, when someone thinks that an adult has been injured or a person has died, you have 2 years from the date when either the alleged negligent act occurred, that's if there is no fatality, and if somebody dies, you have exactly 2 years from the date of death to file a medical malpractice lawsuit. Now, there are some exceptions to that. Usually when it comes to children, if you're under age of 4 and you get injured, you have until your 8th birthday to file a medical malpractice lawsuit and pursue an action. And if you're between the ages of 4, and in Alabama it would be the age of 19, the age of majority, you have up to 4 years to file a medical negligence action and pursue that. But if you fail to get a medical negligence action filed in that time period, you lose the ability forever. So if anybody out there feels like something has happened and gone wrong from a medical negligence standpoint, they need to contact attorneys immediately to investigate.
Art, these time limits are so important because it can take months and months and months for an attorney to investigate these claims because it's not like somebody running a red light where everybody out there knows you're not supposed to run a red light, and if you cause an accident and injure somebody, they may have a legal claim. These are very medicine-intensive, evaluating type cases where you've got to get experts involved, and sometimes they can take weeks, if not months and months and months to investigate. So if you're calling a lawyer 4 or 5 months before your statute of limitations expires, the lawyer's likely going to decline the opportunity to look at your case just because there's simply not enough time to evaluate it.
So then it's so important, because I didn't realize when you say 2 years, in most cases, I think there are some exemptions to that you actually got to get started. And you're saying, like, if you're 4 months away from that, it's tough for an attorney because there's so much involved. How do you assign the other assets to that and make sure that people get what they need in terms of the investigative part of it, gathering the information that's needed from the person who believed that they have been harmed in some way or a loved one was harmed?
So from the outset, when we're contacted about any potential medical malpractice claim, we immediately ask to work with the family to get the records. A lot of times they're tough situations. It is an aggrieved family. They're going through a loss when someone has died or someone is severely injured, and so they've probably already spent a lot of time trying to get through that. And time is of the essence, as Carter mentioned and as you've discussed as well. And then you work with them to get the records and review them as quickly as you can. We have to hire expert witnesses often, and we usually do, to examine them, because sometimes we may look at a case, even a case we were very familiar with the context of, and we may think there is a cause of action there, that something went wrong and the standard of care was not met, but an expert might tell us the exact opposite of it, and it may be just a nuance that we hadn't come across. And it takes time. I often tell clients the most time we ever spend is before we ever even file your lawsuit. It's investigating it.
Yeah, that's really a great point, because these things are so expensive. I know we're about to go to a commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about some of the challenges of pursuing these cases and why the cases have to be really pretty strong to justify pursuing them on behalf of clients.
Justin Owen is our guest, and Carter Clay, of course, giving you an insight on what we're going to talk about when we come back. We also want to remind you, though, that if you have a question right now, don't delay. Go ahead and get in contact with one of the attorneys at Hollis Wright by calling 1-844-LAW-TALK. We also want you to follow us on the social media sites, on Facebook, on Instagram, and on Twitter as well. Like us, subscribe, follow, and you can get information anytime you need it by going to those social media sites. Stick around. We're talking medical malpractice with our special guest, Justin Owen, right here on The Attorneys. We'll be right back.
I'm Josh Wright with the law firm of Hollis Wright, a personal injury law firm, and thank you for watching The Attorneys. We hope you, a friend, or a loved one never needs legal counsel for a case. But if you do, the goal of the show is simple: to provide answers and legal counsel when you need it the most. Your call to the show is free and off air. So if you have questions specific to the show or related to other accident or injury topics, call, email, or text us. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, or go to hollis-wright.com and click on the Contact Us button. We know your time is valuable, so thank you for spending it with us and watching The Attorneys.
attorneys, proudly sponsored by the law firm of Hollis, Wright, are here to serve you.
When we started the show 8 years ago, my hope was we would be able to do what we do best, which is to help people answer real-world legal-related issues they have in their life.
People oftentimes are confronting various legal issues and problems in their lives that range across the gamut of legal practice areas. Bankruptcy, criminal law, family law, just to name a few. And to be able to have a 30-minute platform or format to where we can just cover various legal topics once a week, that's obviously the primary focus of the show.
That we would be able to use the resources of the many lawyers we have at this law firm to create a plan that had a lasting impact that also gave back to the community at the same time. And I think we've done just that with the attorneys.
Did you know when you have to take a case all the way to trial, there is almost always insurance involved? Don't take on large insurance companies on your own. Our attorneys are standing by right now to give you a free consultation. At Hollis Wright, your result matters.
Welcome back. You're watching The Attorneys, and we're talking medical malpractice. We still have a lot to get to. And Carter, before the break, you teased some of the things that we're going to get to right now because there's so much to unpack here.
Yeah, I mentioned before we went to break about the strength of these cases and how strong they have to be to really justify pursuing those cases. And Justin, I want you to talk a little bit about the uniqueness of medical malpractice, the evaluations that go into it, and why these cases have to be particularly strong and involve really significant injuries or death to be able to pursue.
So there's a different type of burden of proof that somebody pursuing a medical malpractice case is required to present in order for that case to even get through the court and get to a jury or a trial. That burden of proof is what's called substantial evidence. Mostly, and in most cases, the burden of proof in most other types is called a preponderance of the evidence. You just have to prove that it weighs just a little bit more in most cases than against it, that your case might potentially be true or that someone could believe your case to be true on a jury. In medical malpractice cases, they call it a difference without a distinction, but it is a difference. It must be substantial evidence, evidence that would convince an unprejudiced thinking mind of the truth of what you're trying to tell them your theory of the case is. And when you do that, you're required to almost invariably present expert testimony from expert witnesses.
Yeah, and these expert witnesses can be very expensive depending upon the specialty or discipline they're in. I know from my experience it can range anywhere from $250 an hour to $1,000 an hour to pay these experts in order to review the file, give deposition testimony and trial testimony. Has that been your experience?
It is, and some cases require 1 or 2 experts. I've had cases, the one I was working on yesterday, I'll have 7 or 8 in the case. And the trial will last 2 weeks if we're lucky, and it'll probably go into a third. And as you can imagine, those costs can balloon. And it takes a lot of effort to work with them as well in time.
Who's paying for the experts, and talk a little bit about the contingency fee process in these cases?
Sure. In our line of work, as often people see on television, we have to front all of the costs in order to pursue the cases. That's the agreement. In exchange for that, the clients pay absolutely nothing up front. We do all the work, we take on all of the risk. Sometimes we get well into a case and something comes up or a fact develops and we realize there is no case and we've expended tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars. But on the backside of that, our law firms take a percentage of the proceeds that are realized in every case. So if there's a verdict, we get a certain percentage of that, and then the clients also share in the expenses as well.
Yeah, so Art, as you can imagine, a law firm like our firm at Hollis Wright or Justin Owen and his firm, I mean, you're financially investing in these cases, and sometimes these cases can be $50,000 or $100,000 plus just in expenses to get you in a position to be able to present your case at trial. So with that level of financial risk, lawyers like ourselves really have to do their due diligence to evaluate these cases on the front end to make sure that they're good, meritorious, viable cases.
That's right. Due diligence and then a certain amount of degree of success in winning that case. You feel pretty strong about it going forward once you decide to take it on. And it's not always that case is there. Some people think they may have a case, but it may not be malpractice in the first place. surgery just didn't go the way they wanted it to, or the care wasn't the type of care that they wanted, but it's not necessarily malpractice.
That is correct. No healthcare provider guarantees the success of any particular treatment or procedure. And that's very fair because everybody's out there doing the best job that they can all the time. Nobody intends to injure anybody. Nobody intends to cause somebody to die. But it does happen, and as with any line of work, they have insurance in place that is either purchased for them or that they have to cover them in that instance and take care of the people that unfortunately are on the other end of that as victims.
Yeah, we had a viewer question that came in that I thought was a great question I wanted to ask it. This particular viewer was on a jury in a medical malpractice trial and noticed that the plaintiffs in the case, all their medical experts were from outside Alabama, and the experts for the medical providers were all in-state Alabama. And of course, I thought that was very intuitive of them to recognize that. But is that your experience in terms of the difficulties of getting experts?
It absolutely is. It's very, very difficult, no matter what state you're practicing in, to get a healthcare provider expert from that particular state where your case is pending to testify against another healthcare provider who's also from the same state. That happens for a number of reasons. I'll rattle off a list of about 3 of them. One of them is they're all in the same line of work. They refer each other patients, both the facilities and the individual providers in their groups. Obviously, you know, I would be reticent and hesitant to sue you if I felt like you had done something wrong or testify that you had done something wrong. I imagine or hope it would be the same with you with respect to me and my firm. There's that natural inclination to not go against one of your own because you all work together and you've all worked really hard to be where you are. The second one is a lot of them are insured by the same health insurers. It's not like your Geico's and the myriad of car insurance companies. There's so many commercials you can't even count. There's really a set number of large malpractice insurance companies, and they insure the majority of healthcare providers in the country. And they have clauses in their contracts with their people and their policies that say you can't testify against someone else we insure. They have a reason to do that because it costs them money. They want to maximize their profits. And it also happens with respect to these large professional staffing companies, huge ones, that staff many hospitals throughout the country. They don't want their own healthcare providers testifying against their other ones.
Yeah, and I also think, Art, that there is, and I think Justin would agree with this, I do think that there is a natural sort of partiality and bias that jurors feel in favor of kind of siding with the doctors and healthcare providers that have been sued in a particular case. And I think that bias and partiality resonates even more if you're in sort of a rural area. And probably the best example that I could give to the viewers of how that could play out is say, for instance, that you're filing a lawsuit in a fairly rural county against the local pediatrician, and you're going to strike a jury and you're going through your venari or your jury pool. Well, invariably, you're going to ask them, hey, do any of you know Dr. So-and-so? He's been a pediatrician here for 30 years. And almost every hand goes up in the venari and they say, oh yeah, I know Dr. So-and-so. He treated my children and we went to him as a pediatrician. And all of a sudden you're looking and 75% of the people out there, their kids went to see that particular doctor. So you are kind of starting out from time to time with a little bit of an uphill battle there.
Talking change of venue at that point.
Absolutely. Well, if we could be so fortunate, but unfortunately that's not a good basis. Yeah.
Well, that's a good place for us to go ahead and take a break right here. We're talking medical malpractice, and we got Justin Owen in with us as our special guest. We're listening to you, of course, at 1-844-LAW-TALK. You can reach a live attorney at Hollis, Wright. Any question that you may have so they can get back to you. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back as we continue here on The Attorneys.
I'm Josh Wright with the law firm of Hollis, Wright. As with any industry, it's important in the legal world to hire an attorney that is knowledgeable and has a track record of success. But with so many attorneys out there and so many different types of cases, how does someone decide the right lawyer to hire? In this week's Legal 4-in-1, we're answering the question, what should I consider in hiring an attorney? In-state versus out-of-state, big firm or little firm, recommendations from friends or family, the internet or TV. With so many choices and so much information, it can be an overwhelming task trying to make the right decision. To complicate things, Choosing a lawyer is an important and sometimes life-affecting decision and should not be taken lightly. So how do you select an attorney? First, do your research. Look the firm up on the internet. Learn about the cases they handle and the results they get. Second, find out what clients are saying about the firm. Many websites provide client testimonials or have a star ranking system. Use those to your advantage. And finally, talk with a lawyer from their office and ask them questions. Questions about the volume of cases they handle. Do they return phone calls? Are you just a number or a client that gets the attention you deserve? Please remember, your call, email, or text to the attorneys is free. All of us at Hollis Wright want to help answer your questions on real issues you face. Remember, a competent lawyer will respond to every question you send in. That's our pledge and promise to you. Thanks for watching The Attorneys. At Hollis Wright, we pride ourselves on having a bedside manner that's second to none. That means we listen more than we speak, and we return calls to current and potential clients. Our attorneys are standing by right now. At Hollis Wright, your result matters.
Welcome back, and thanks for joining us here on The Attorneys as we're talking medical malpractice. This is our final segment. I want to remind you that you can still reach one of the attorneys at Hollis Wright at 1-844-LAW-TALK. It's free. It's confidential. Love to hear from you as we're talking medical malpractice with our special guest, Justin Owen.
Yeah, Justin, so talk a little bit about, there are individuals out there that may think there are too many lawsuits in general, and others, individuals out there that think there are too many medical malpractice claims that are being brought and that these claims are hurting doctors and hospitals' business. What would you say to those individuals?
Well, it's a lovely talking point that a lot of people try to raise when they're looking for attention sometimes, when they try to really sensationalize how many medical malpractice suits are filed or how large verdicts may or may not be. The reality is that malpractice claims make up a very, very small percentage of plaintiffs' cases. Yep. Yeah,
well, and I was also going to add to that, and I think you would echo this sentiment, is we probably get more calls from individuals on medical malpractice cases than any other types of civil litigation that is out there, but we by far accept a very, very nominal or small amount of those types of cases to actually pursue. So we're getting a lot of calls. Do y'all get a lot of calls about this area as well?
We really do. And a lot of the situations are families and loved ones calling about what's happened to them or people they know. And it's a horrible outcome, but there was really no evidence that anything was done or failed to do that caused it. You see it a lot. Yeah.
And I think people need to know that these medical providers and doctors, they have liability insurance just like the viewers have automobile insurance. Has that been your experience as well?
They do. They have somebody standing behind them to protect them. So it's something juries often have a natural hesitancy. You know, doctors and nurses, they're there to help people. They're trying to do that every day. No one debates that. No one says anybody's intending to hurt anybody or has a design to hurt somebody. But at the same time, people need to understand that as with anybody in a case, they have insurance back there to take care of the people who wind up injured as a result of them not doing their job correctly.
Yeah. So in that case, you're really dealing with probably two sets of lawyers. Really, you've got insurance for the facility, then you have insurance for the actual person who practices. So you've got multiple people involved, or multiple agencies.
You really do. There are certain minimum limits they set. It varies between practices from time to time. Often it's less than you would think, given the outcome. I've had cases where clients were paralyzed and there was only a small amount of money compared to what they would need for the rest of their lives, and they were in their 30s and 40s and they would live a long time. That being said, it's important because society picks up the cost of taking care of these people that are injured as a result of the negligence of others. Y'all are aware of that, of course, acutely aware of it, but people need to understand whether you're paying out of your pocket directly or not. You know, Medicare, Medicaid, taxes, all of these things go to taking care of the greater societal needs, and one of those are increased when people create medical errors.
Yeah. After you conduct your investigation, let's assume for purposes of our discussion, you decided to accept the case and file a lawsuit. Talk a little bit about what your client can expect in terms of how long it will take to either get their case resolved or get to trial, and what involvement does your client have during that process?
So the client's involvement is always one of the two most important parts of a case, the other one being the expert witnesses we discussed. What they can expect is when you file the lawsuit, there's a mandatory 30-day period where the defendants have to respond after they're served with a copy of the lawsuit. A lot of times they try to file motions, even if there's no reason to file them, simply to buy themselves a little bit more time. I'm often pleased because I just get a phone call asking for a little bit more time to file an answer. Then after that, you get the discovery phase, which is really the longest part, the pretrial discovery phase. It takes years usually to ferret out. The fastest I've ever tried a medical malpractice case was in 2 years flat.
From the time you filed the lawsuit.
And that was breakneck speed. I probably had 30 other matters, and this matter took precedence every single day. It's incredibly difficult to do and to meet it because there are always new facts and evidence that come out. There's always something out there somewhere that it may take a little longer to find, and when it comes up, it can change the entire dynamic of a case.
And the discovery that you talked about, are depositions involved in that process? Do your clients give deposition testimony, and what is a deposition?
So a deposition is sworn testimony where a party or a witness sits down and they're placed under oath and they swear on the Bible to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God, as we see in all the television and movies. And that is their opportunity to say and explain what happened to them, to tell their side of the story about what the truth is and what they experienced and heard and saw and felt. Then after that, other witnesses who may have been around during those events or expert witnesses give depositions as well. And it is all very important because we've taken as many as 45 or 50 depositions in a case, or as few as 5 and gone to trial.
Yeah, and some of these depositions can last a long period of time, hours upon hours.
Yeah.
Let's talk briefly about informed consent. What is informed consent, and then does a doctor get off from liability if he gave your client informed consent?
Okay, so informed consent is when a healthcare provider is involved in a treatment with a patient, usually a physician, and they're supposed to explain what the benefits of the proposed treatment and services they're offering and are recommending are, what the potential risks are or detriments of them, and then also any alternatives that may exist to give the patients an opportunity to choose either that method or something else. And it is a required disclosure under the law and under the rules that apply to the medical profession. And if physicians or if healthcare providers fail to disclose all the risk, benefits, and alternative treatments available that are material to the decision that the patient is making, then they may not obtain fully informed consent and the patient not be fully aware about what they're doing.
Yeah. I know we're running short on time, so I just want to give a final charge to the viewers that, look, these cases are challenging, they're complicated, but if you think that you or a family member have been a victim of medical malpractice, it doesn't hurt to call somebody like myself or Justin Owen's firm and just talk with them through it. They'll give you a free consultation. They'll be up front and tell you about the challenges and the expenses involved in their particular case, and may even be willing to look at some records initially to give you an idea of whether you've got a case or not.
And the big takeaway, 2 years.
That's right. 2 years from the time of the incident.
Remember that. That's so important. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We really do appreciate when you join us here on The Attorneys. Got another great show lined up for you next week, and you can always get in contact with the attorneys at Hollis Wright at 1-844-LAW-TALK. Have a great evening. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for watching The Attorneys, sponsored by Hollis Wright.